Welcome to Evolving Ideas. I'm Elaine Smitha. This is Olympia's own alternative television show, the most exciting show going on the air. My guest today is Joy Gilbert, who has been abducted hundreds of times since she was 3 years old, and she's here to tell us about her personal experience. Whether you agree or not is not my concern. It is to simply bring you the knowledge for you to make your own mind up. So join me in welcoming Joy Gilbert. Welcome, Joy, to Evolving Ideas.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sure that you are very controversial in many circles.
Oh, yes. I get all kinds of responses from people. The media is usually the area which I find most responsive one way or another, positive or negative. But what I experience from the people who come to hear me speak at my lectures and seminars is truly phenomenal. I was absolutely shocked when I first came out because I was so terrified. Even writing the book, I thought, oh, I'm going to put somebody else's name on it. I didn't want anybody to know.
Didn't want to own it yourself?
No, I didn't want anybody to know.
They thought you would
that it
be
was
weird.
Me. Yeah, you bet. Well, I didn't want it to hurt my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so after talking with friends and family and myself, knowing that I had to own this material, this was who I was, and in spite of whether or not people accepted it or rejected it, I needed to be who I was in the world, period. It was time for me to do that, and this is who I am. I had this experience in 1993, and it changed my life forever.
Totally,
absolutely.
Well,
Turned it upside down.
I first heard you on Art Bell's show, on the radio talk show, and that's on his Dreamland show, which is one of my favorite shows.
Right.
And I was fascinated with how vibrant you were and how dynamic, and your perspective was so filled with love. And I thought, boy, do we need this. We've got so much negative stuff.
Yes.
And I remember telling you that I had watched the movie Fire in the Sky.
Yes.
And you told me you laughed through it.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my goodness, most of the time people are hanging on to their chairs, because Hollywood sort of went berserk on some of their drama.
Yes, they did.
And even Travis Walton, who the story was about, even admits that himself.
Yes.
And so they kind of changed a lot of things in that story, so that it isn't really a true story.
Right.
But your perspective was so refreshing, and I just felt that we've had a lot of the other side, with a lot of abductees that we have read about who've been terrified by their experience.
Right.
And Whitley Strieber, of course, with his book Communion, and his whole perspective was pretty much that same way. And so when I heard you, I said, my goodness, this is refreshing. This is a whole nother aspect to be considered. And so then you said, well, you were booked until 97, and I thought, oh, what the heck, I'll write to you anyway, which I did, and now we've connected, which is wonderful, and here you are.
Yeah.
See, so that's what happens. You just put it out there and it happens.
Yes.
So you have had hundreds of experiences.
Yes.
Now, some people have one or two, and that changes their life dramatically, but how is it that hundreds
Well,
of
the
experiences?
difference between me and what someone else experiences is what I perceive as awareness. It's not that I'm the only one having these experiences, or that I've had hundreds and nobody else is, or that, just because somebody doesn't even know they're having these experiences, they're not having these experiences. Just because they don't know they are doesn't mean they're not having these experiences.
Well, that's a surprise, because I told you about some experiences that I've had that I've not had any answers to.
Exactly.
And it seems like when we went through this that, wow, these really were real experiences.
Right.
And I even had my brain waves done, so as I was telling some of these, to see whether or not I was making it up, or whether it was a figment of my imagination, or whether it was a real experience. And it came out that it was these were all real experiences, which was such a surprise to me.
Exactly. And if you remember, if you read my book, you did read my book.
Yes, I read your wonderful book.
Thank you. And we talked, I was 44 years old, and it was in 1993 before ever realizing that I'd had an alien abduction experience. It was that time in my life, January 31st, when I experienced an alien abduction, that I realized that I'd been having them all my life. So even though throughout my life I'd had what I would consider angelic intervention. For years, I felt that these beings were there protecting me, guiding me, loving me, caring for me, providing circumstances that were of benefit for me. And because I was raised a Christian, and my dad was Jewish and my mother was Catholic, and I was raised in a Methodist church by them because they felt that that was a good way to be raised. I was raised believing in God and believing in angelic kinds of things, believing in
that God is good and God is
mysticism.
love.
Exactly, exactly, and that He's always there to care for you.
Right.
So I was, as a child, I grew up experiencing what other people perceived or would call paranormal experiences. I myself thought, oh, okay, Jesus talks about this in the Bible, or St. Paul, St. John, they talk about these things in the Bible, so they must be okay. And so I'd have these experiences of the man coming into my room at night as a child. Well, my grandfather had just died, Elaine, when I was 3.5. And so when this being came into my room at night as a child, I thought it was my
your
grandfather. And he wore a fedora hat.
Yes.
Which is, my grandfather wore a fedora hat.
Oh, really?
To shade to shade his failing eyes from the sun. But what was most important to me was not the fact that the being came in or didn't come in, but the fact that the love that was emanated from this being to me could be nothing but good for me.
Well, that would be a normal response.
As a child, absolutely. And so as I grew into my adulthood, I began to see that life wasn't the way that I had been taught in the Bible and in school. Most of my socialization was done by my parents, and although they loved me very much, they cared more about what I was accomplishing in school, who my friends were, how I was socializing, instead of what I was feeling as a human being and the experiences that I was having with, if you will, beings of light, if you will, or my angels. And I think all children are taught to experience those things and allowed to experience those things until they reach a certain age when it's not okay for those to have those magical kinds of perceptions.
Well, they allow children.
Exactly.
What about the child who puts their dolly in the chair and they have this relationship with their dolly, or they'll say, well, yes, so-and-so, I have this invisible friend.
Exactly.
I mean, what about Harvey and the invisible rabbit?
I know, that's really great.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, exactly. So, I had those experiences, but for me, I didn't perceive that I was any different than anyone else. And it wasn't until I got into my teens and I started meditating, that was more a reaction for me of the Vietnam War. I wasn't into drugs. I was seeing that as a human being in this society, I was virtually helpless. A lot of my dear young boys and friends that I'd gone to kindergarten with and elementary school and middle school, junior high at that time, and high school were going to Vietnam, and many of them were not coming back. And the ones that were coming back jaded and confused and bitter and angry. And I didn't know how I could change what was happening. And I started meditating as a means of changing myself, making myself a better human being. And it was after I started meditating that things really began. I began to see more light and experience more, if you will, beings. And it was at that time that a being came to me and asked for my heart.
Well, now, wait a minute now.
Yes.
Ask for your heart.
Yes.
We're not making donations. We're not making any heart donations here, right?
Well, I didn't perceive it on that level. I believed that each of us
and it wasn't a love interest, right?
No, it certainly wasn't a love interest. But I believe that each of us come into this world to serve creation, to serve God, if you will. I like
kind
to
of have
use
that
the word,
feeling too.
Yes, and whether we know it or not, or whether we're a victim or a perpetrator of crime or whatever, each of us is a unique and valuable entity.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be here.
That's right. We all exist in oneness.
Yes, I always figure that we are a success already because we made it through the birth canal, because we wouldn't have made it out of. I mean, the count, is pretty disproportionate to the result.
It's phenomenal. When I was
is.
working in child abuse, when I was working with...
You have a background in psychology, don't you?
I do. I have a degree in psychology. I graduated Phi Beta Kappa summa cum laude from the University of Oregon.
That's not too shabby.
No, it's not. And then I did graduate work in neuroscience and counseling. And what was so stunning to me when I worked in the field of child abuse was working with women who had taken crack, cocaine, had taken numerous drugs day in, night throughout the pregnancy. One woman, as a matter of fact, I got a judge to put her in jail for the remainder of her pregnancy, the termination of her pregnancy, so that she quit doing drugs. But I was astounded at the magnificence of those babies. Yes, there's all kinds of deficits, brain deficits, physiological abnormalities that occur to women who do drugs while they are pregnant. But when I saw so many of those children being born without anything but a drug addiction, you look at that and you know there's a God. You know creation is operating through everything. It is so merciful and so beautiful to see things like that. Shouldn't be okay, turn out okay for people. It's phenomenal. So I did that for a while, and that was wonderful. It was very hard working. I was a expert witness for the district attorney's office and attorney general's office. I spent an awful lot of time working with parents. I had a parent program.
Was this dealing with mostly child abuse?
Yes. I did many years ago work in early childhood education. I worked in alternative schools with gifted children, and I worked with advantaged and I worked with disadvantaged children. And then later became a program director. I worked for CSD, Children's Services Division, and
where was that?
That was in Eugene, Oregon. And then I worked as a program director for Lane County Relief Nursery, which is a fabulous program for providing treatment to children from the ages of 6 weeks, mind you, to 6 years who have been abused. So, and I had a parent program. I worked with the parents in parenting skills, developing parenting skills, so that anger wasn't,
I would like to ask you.
Prevalent thing.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you about this. I mean, could we just deviate just a moment?
Sure.
I mean, I just want to know.
It's very important to who I am for people to understand when I talk about joy and I talk about bliss and I talk about the love that I experience of life in life, for them to understand that I have really seen how decrepit, how ignorant, how sad creation, how people can be, suffering and misery. Yes.
Is there a common thread in child abuse homes that you could just say, most of it is
passed on?
It's passed on.
It's passed on from one generation to another. Clearly, a mother or a father demonstrates abusive patterns toward their child, and the child, not knowing any different, demonstrates, it grows up thinking that that's the way to relate, and they demonstrate those patterns to their children.
We teach
and
as we
so
are
we teach it.
taught.
So it's a cultural disease, is what it is. It really is. It's a very infectious, sad disease. But it's exciting for me as a person who is in that field to see the kinds of leaps that we as a culture have made.
Yes.
In acknowledging the problem.
That's true.
And really moving toward finding some way to prevent it, helping parents help themselves. And yes, one might say, it's like a drop in the bucket. It is, but one person that you benefit or help so that they can be a better person or parent, it just affects the whole society. So we're all so interdependent.
This is true.
That's the one thing that I came away with that was the most significant when I experienced the alien abduction and I felt myself become one with them, was the recognition that we are all one, and that everything I do and everything I think and everything I feel affects every other thing that exists within creation, not just with people,
Right.
but exists within creation.
It has to do with energy.
It really does. It has to do with very, very clearly with energy, not with what you think you are. If you look at that little model I drew over there, I drew a model of the...
We have one on the chart over there.
Yeah.
Camera can pick that up.
I drew a model of the human mind. I kind of like to... well, this is a picture of the alien. Isn't that an exquisite drawing? What I wanted to show here when I saw the alien was they were wrapped in a swirl of blue-white light. To me, I didn't, even though I experienced them as a physical form, I also knew they were light. And if you study physics at all, you will understand that as you take a molecule of your fingernail or a molecule of this knit skirt or your watch, and you put it under a microscope, and you take it down to its subatomic particles, down to its nuclear level down there, you will find that each of those particles end up being nothing. And then when it emerges out from the nothing is a frequency of light, okay?
That's true.
When I experienced quantum physics, very powerful. It's something that many people understood years and years ago, but it's only now become something that people are acknowledging. That's true. And scientists are really doing a lot of work on it.
They are.
And it is something real, because now we have the tools to identify quantum physics. So if you take things down to their finest particles, you'll see that they're at the source. Okay, so for me, these beings, say for instance, they exist on a subtler layer of creation. They exist in light, okay?
Well, they say now that light, that energy that we're getting, that we are made of light.
Yes.
And we're more hollow in terms of space between the cells than we are mass.
Yes. Yes.
This is what science is determining now.
Yes.
That, you know, and I had one scientist on my show one time, and he said, you know, we have all the energy we'd ever need in this much space. This is all compressed down.
Right.
It's all there, and out of which all creation comes. So here we are, a body in physical form, mass. We look like we're solid.
Exactly.
But we're not.
Exactly. And that's why I like to do this little drawing. It's not really very good, but it's incredibly accurate. When I've got up there the level of speech, I refer to the level of speech as everything that we see, everything that we hear, everything that we smell, everything in the phenomenal existence that's outside ourself, our skin. Then you think of the thinking mind. Okay, scientists say we use from 3 to 10% of our brain.
That's not very much.
No, and I was talking to a biologist, a microbiologist recently, and we were talking about DNA, because when I was on the ship with these beings, they told me that my DNA had been activated, and that I had to activate other people. Oh, well, you know, that's an astonishing thing to me, because I'd never heard the term activation or thought of it in terms of DNA or a human being being activated. But I understood that I knew that we only use from 3 to 10% of our brain mass, okay? So if there's 90 to 97% of our brain mass that we are not conscious of, that exists in the subconscious realm, okay? That means that when we perceive reality, we are only perceiving reality with 3 to 10% of our brain. I'm saying 10% and being generous. But the reality is if your perception is based only in 3 to 7% of your brain, how can you see things as they truly are?
Well, that's true. Well, we only see things anyway in the in the electromagnetic spectrum from the visible light. That's the narrowest band of all on the electromagnetic spectrum.
Exactly.
And the rest is all light, but it's not visible light.
Right. Right.
So when you say light, I mean, it could be.
It's frequencies.
It's frequency.
And it could manifest in the terms of this exquisite flower, this book, this exquisite purple fabric, your watch.
Right.
It's just frequencies of light. And we have all agreed to perceive it in a certain way. Is this really what's happening here? No. I don't think so. For me, after being with these beings, when I look at the world, it looks like a shadow.
Really?
It looks like a shadow.
That's
when I see
interesting.
people, I look at them, and even though I see their form and I see all the different things that exist around their physical form, I look at them and all I see is light. So I have no ability to see them separate from me.
Would you, now when you're talking about this, would you call it like the auric field?
The auric field, auras, I don't really relate well because
that's
of my
light.
background. I understand, yes. I don't really relate to that concept well because of my background, because of my psychology and my science and my rearing, if you will. But my perception from what I've heard about auras and seen about auras is you could perceive it in that way. For me, it doesn't matter. It's just energy.
Well, I know that, but for our viewers who may have had some exposure to auric fields and that light around the physical body, this would give them a touchstone.
Yes. So for me, when I experienced the beings on the ship and they told me it's time to remember, I remembered who I was. I remembered what it was I was doing here. And the love that I felt for them was so profound, Elaine, and so powerful. I really didn't want to come back. I experienced myself literally turning to light. I experienced the particles of myself dispersing, and I felt myself as a truly light being. And I knew that that's what I was. That's what I have always been.
Yes, well, you know, some of the near-death experiences that have been related, you know, Daniel Brinkley is one, and very well known, who also had this same sense that he didn't really want to come back. He was happy being there and that it was all light. In fact, his latest book is dealing with that. So I don't think that being contacted by aliens is much different than
really
having
not.
this near-death experience, because I have several friends who have had this experience and they kind of relate a similar thing.
Right. Unfortunately, most of the media out there is presenting the negative aspects, the negative perceptual aspects, if you will. What we perceive is true, what we perceive is real about the alien abduction phenomena. We live in a society that is based in fear.
That's true.
And when you look at the world through fear and doubt, then you cannot see what is truly happening. If I walk into a room, if I was in here with you, and the moment I saw you, I felt, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid I can't get up on that stage in front of the camera. What would I experience being here? I would experience tremendous suffering. Okay, but you know, hey, I don't care, you know. I have no investment in how things turn out. I have no investment in what people think of me. I have no investment in whether, you know, someone thinks I'm a nut, a crackpot, or whatever. I am not here to live through somebody else's eyes. I am here to be the person I am, as each of us are.
That's
and
true.
so in being that, I fulfill my purpose to God. I fulfill my service to creation, which is all I care to do. So if I look at the world and I am who I am and I act in the world with the joy and the love that I am and I feel, then it's impossible for me to have a negative experience.
That's true.
So I never have a negative experience.
Yes, if you look for the purposeful good in everything, you know, that comes to your way, I find for myself, even if it's something that doesn't necessarily match my quote-unquote expected result in that moment, then I have to pause and I say, well, everything is purposeful good.
Right.
So what is the lesson in this? What can I learn from this, and how can I grow from this experience and become greater and more of who I am?
There comes a moment in time for each of us when we remember who we are, and in that moment we are given all that is and all that ever will be, because we are each so worthy of knowing and comprehending all the universes and all the worlds that exist in the phenomenal existence. When we go home, there is no thinking about whether this is a good thing. There is no looking for whether this is wrong or right. There is no looking or learning to be done, because in the moment you have the experience, the perfection of that experience has already manifest.
The wisdom?
The wisdom. And that's all there is.
Is there wisdom, though, without understanding?
Yes, absolutely. Again, understanding, where does it come from? It comes from our thinking mind. We can have wisdom. For me, absolute wisdom is knowing, and knowing comes from a different place than thinking. And we often, and you may be asking exactly the same thing I'm saying, but I want to say it in this way.
That's fine. Go
because
ahead.
we often equate understanding with learning and thinking.
Right.
And what
That's
I'm
why I asked that
saying
question.
is that you can have knowing without learning and thinking.
Yes, I agree.
And knowing is wisdom.
That would
Knowing
be
is absolute wisdom.
intuitive?
It would be, it's like core knowledge. It's like somebody asked me the other day, not too long ago, why do you think, okay, why do you go out there and say that this is an exquisite experience, this is a part of creation? Why would you go out and say that these aliens are good and they're not here to hurt us? Why would you go out and say that everybody has implants? Why would you say that? Don't you think that people would think you're nuts? And why don't you think you're nuts? Because I know. That's all. I can't tell somebody what I know. I can't tell someone what I know. They have to experience for themselves what is true for them. And I don't expect anybody to believe me. I am who I am. I present myself to the world, and those who understand, those who want to know, those who are ready to understand and experience the kinds of things I have experienced and I know are. I don't need to do anything.
That's true, but now let me just interject this now. What about dreams? Because everyone has a dream, and in the telling of the dream, no one would believe what they were saying because they hadn't had the experience of the dream themselves.
Exactly.
So is this not very similar to what you are expressing in terms of how we accept and reject?
Yes, exactly. So you're dreaming a dream that you think is your life. And one day you wake up and find that you're not who you thought you were. You realize that you are the dreamer having a dream.
That's true.
And that's what happened when the beings came to me. It was as if I was an amnesiac who awakened from a dream. And this world that I thought was my world, the joy that I thought, who I thought I was, the wife, the mother, the person who worked in the community, who did charitable work, the person who studied meditation, all those kinds of things, all the things I thought I was were the dream. And who I was so much more profound than I could have ever understood with my thinking mind. I had to lose what I thought about myself in order to cognize who I was.
In other words, you took the perceptions of say, what your parents said that you were, and your grandparents and your friends and all your other relatives.
And social institutions. And religious organizations and what is it, peer groups, the university, all the things that I did
the labels.
To become, all the labels, all the perceptions, and I can tell you honestly that this knowledge that you gain throughout your life occurs on a cellular level. It really is. It is really not just philosophy. People are always thinking that what I speak about is philosophy. Absolutely not. When scientists have the tools to totally comprehend in science what I'm talking about, they will see that this is not something that's philosophical. It has nothing to do with philosophy. It is physiological. It is a physiological event. What are we here to do in creation? Why do we take form?
I think a lot of people are wondering, why are we here?
Yes, why are we here?
Why are we on this planet? What is my life really about?
Right.
What am I supposed to be doing with my life? I mean, was I just planted here to go through this day-to-day mainstream of
Right.
mediocrity, or am I destined for something greater? What is our mission here?
Each of us here take on form for one reason, and that's to bring light into the phenomenal existence.
Okay, now we have to stop here.
Okay.
Because you're talking, bringing this form. You better explain to the viewers what you mean by form.
Okay.
Because you have a little terminology there. That
I
needs to
do.
be
I
explained.
created my own terminology because I didn't have words to describe what it was that I was experiencing. Okay, for me at this point, after being with the beings, I no longer perceive this as who I am. I feel that it is a vehicle to serve me, a container.
Now you're talking about
the
physical body. Okay.
The physical body. So
it's just a vehicle?
It's just a vehicle. So for me, it's like a car, and a car needs to be cared for and maintained in order to be fully functional.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Right. You gotta
so
fill it
that's
with gas.
why you do certain things, like you meditate.
Right.
You make sure you're in good environments for yourself. You provide good nutrition for your body so that your body can function.
So
normally.
You're coming from a different perspective rather than just feeding your face for,
Absolutely.
just because it's mealtime.
Absolutely.
You're coming, if I understand you correctly, you're coming from the vantage point that you must nurture this physical form, this physical body, to allow you to do other things that are beyond that.
That are beyond the form. Beyond the concept of living in the world and just being who you think you are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
living up to some standard,
living
whether
up to
it's
some
your own or somebody else's.
Exactly.
The image?
The image, the
ego?
idea, the perception, what religions and what people have taught us to believe. Yes.
So that impacts us a lot, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
What
Absolutely.
other people think we are.
It keeps us in darkness. It keeps us in darkness. One of the greatest messages that these beings told me to share with people was that it was imperative to feel what we feel, that the feelings are not who we are, but only through them can we know what is real in this world. That we can think, and we can read, and we can do all those things. And I'm not saying that you can't find incredible books out there. My book is wonderful. I'm not saying that you can't find there's a lot of good books out there from Chopra, a lot of good books with good knowledge in them that should be read. But it's far more important for people to listen to what they feel and do what is in their heart than to follow someone else. We have been doing this forever, and it doesn't work. All it does is to keep people, what is the word, in separateness. Okay, my religion is good, your religion is bad.
I know.
I'm going to go to heaven, and you're going to go to hell because you're not a Christian, you're a Jew. This is not what God had in mind.
No, I agree.
This is not true even. It is not true. We are all one. When we recognize and see, as we move into different states of consciousness, as we expand our awareness and see who we are, we understand, not on thinking, not based on reading, not based on anything that we read, we acknowledge immediately that being as an entity of creation. It is not a conscious thought. It is immediately experienced within the whole being. There's a difference between belief and wisdom, belief and knowing. Like you were saying earlier, belief is something that changes with the wind. One moment you believe this, you get some new information, you believe something else. Like sometimes, people will come in or say, for instance, I'd be mad at my daughter if she came home late from a date. But when I, got all the information, I found that she wasn't late from a date because of anything that she did wrong or anything that she was doing wrong. She wasn't out,
I mean, she wasn't obeying all the tenets of the family.
Well, at that moment she hadn't, and so I was angry with her, right?
Of course.
But in the moment that I got new information about what had transpired, and I understood that she was, not, betraying my confidence and letting her go out, then, everything was all right. So with new information, your belief changes.
This is true.
So belief
That's what's
changes.
so great about this show.
Yeah, it's true. Belief changes as easily as we change our shoes. It's like that. Or change of clothes. So I prefer to speak of belief in terms of you know, a pair of pants or something.
Yeah.
Or
Do we get in our
change of
own way?
clothes. Pardon?
Do we get into our in our own way? Did these friends of yours say anything about how our ego and our perception of who we are gets in our way of being more of who we are?
What is exquisite about creation is that it is naturally unfolding, and the unfoldment of creation, like the unfoldment of an exquisite bud that turns into a flower, it occurs no matter what you think. So the unfoldment of who we really are is inevitable.
That's really beautiful.
There is nothing you can do to stop the flow of creation.
That gives a lot of hope to people.
Absolutely. There is a tremendous amount of love. If you could see the thousands and thousands of different layers of creation and beings that live in all the worlds of creation that exist only to love one precious human being. It was so astounding for me when the beings came and showed me who I was, and I understood that each human being was exactly like me, and all the beings that had existed with me throughout all the worlds of time and space lived to serve each of us. Mm-hmm. And it released me from all responsibility.
Now that's interesting.
I was liberated because
in what way?
I no longer felt responsible to take care of other people's problems.
Well, you can't live their life for them, so why do we get involved in it? Is that what you were learning?
That's what I was doing before when I was helping people I'm not saying that people shouldn't help other people.
No, I think we need to do that.
We have to do that. Mm-hmm. That's part of being a human being.
Right.
That's
it's
a part
humanity.
of our work.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't acknowledge who they are,
mm-hmm.
you don't serve them at all.
No.
And if you don't know who you are, mm-hmm. you can't acknowledge. That is them. How trite that is. I mean, you hear all the time, well, if you don't have love inside yourself, if you don't love yourself, then you can't love other people. Well, it's absolutely true. You know, and we all think that, we can do it, but we don't. We don't listen to ourselves. We don't love ourselves. We stay in abusive marriages. We allow I've been in more churches where, or Catholic or Jewish, where people in the congregations and the synagogue have been abused and allowed themselves to be hurt over and over and over again. You know, I mean, I'm not saying it's all that way. Of course it's not. There's some wonderful churches out there. But I am saying that people do not understand that who they are is the gift of life. Their beingness, their thoughts, their feelings, no matter what they are, whether they're negative, whether they're good, you know. So you have a negative thought. That doesn't mean if you want to go out and smack your mother-in-law or your father-in-law, I'm not saying that a human being should go out and smack their mother-in-law or their father-in-law. I am saying that human beings in this culture particularly do not honor that thought. They are constantly assessing, is this a good thought? Is this a bad? Should I have this thought? Should I have that? Instead of acknowledging the flow of creation that is constantly flowing through each of us and is absolutely exquisite. Positive or negative, it's just energy.
So you're saying that everybody is trying to balance the sheet from positive and negative.
Absolutely.
They're coming to that center point,
Absolutely.
trying to find some answer for themselves. And the act of creation is ongoing. As you were saying about how the flowers bloom, I look at my yard and I see these plants, and despite all my efforts to deter their growth, they still continue to do that.
Exactly.
And I look at the lawn when I mow the lawn, you know, and the grass says, "Thank you very much for giving me another opportunity to grow again."
Exactly. Exactly.
I just am. I'm so impressed. It's been wonderful for me to live in that kind of an environment because I grew up in the city. You know, concrete kind of thing. and to be in nature and to watch the ongoing growth. And it's very gradual. You know, I can cut back the plants, and pretty soon there's little tendrils that go out. You know,
exquisite.
You can't stop
You
it.
can't
You can't stop
it.
creation. It's just always there.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly being rewarded with great messages.
Yes.
You know how creation works.
Yes. Yes.
So well, now on this light being, it came in blue-white light.
Yes.
Is this the color and essence of what this energy is when you can see it?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yes, it is.
Because we keep getting reports about that.
It turns to white because if you look at white, what is white light? If you take all the colors of the rainbow
of everything
and
together.
you spin them, then they turn to white. Okay?
All together.
But before it turns to white, it turns to blue. A blue-white light. And what is it? I mean, we are, as a planet, we are traveling, I think it was 63,000 miles per minute in space towards a blue-white star.
Yes. Isn't that interesting?
So exquisite to me. What is blue-white light is found at the very finest layers of creation. So for me, how can I relate to these beings? Only as angels. See, I don't like to use the term angel because people have a perception of what an angel is.
Yes, they have that connotation of what
they
it is.
They do, and it's more than that for me. You know, I didn't know they came in ships. That was a stunning shock to me, that they came in ships. I never believed in ships, but they do have ships. And when we look around at our own world, the world that we see with our eyes, we see all this incredible life. We see frogs, we see ants, we see cockroaches, we see exquisite kinds of deer and buck and, you know, and plants and all this incredible life. So how is it that we could perceive that just because we don't see it, it doesn't exist?
This is true.
When I talk to people about the fact that they are light and the fact that they are the love and the joy of creation and that they are the gift of God, each of us are, they say, oh, I'm suffering now. Oh, I have this suffering. Oh, it's true. We all experience these kinds of things living in the physical body, living in the phenomenal existence, living on this planet. We have an opportunity to experience suffering. If we remembered who we were there, we could not experience one moment of suffering because the joy and the light that we are is so overwhelming and so powerful, we would not be able to have a human experience. Why do we take on bodies? To have a human experience. That's the only reason. To have a human experience and then bring the light of God, if you will, into the body, into the physical form.
Which would change the frequency and the vibration of the body.
That's right.
It would make you lighter instead of heavier.
That's right. It changes everything. Changes the molecular structure of the cells completely.
Transmutes them.
Transforms them, transmutes them, turns them to light. That's called enlightenment. So for me... You
mean enlightenment is not some destination?
No. It is when literally the cells turn to light.
A lot of disappointed people.
No, it's you already are enlightened. People are always looking for it outside themselves, and all they have to do is be who they are, because God is always coming to us. All we have to do is quit trying to create it, trying to make it happen, and allow creation to show us who we are. It's the letting go and being who you are in the world that allows God to come to you. It's the holding tight to something keeps it away from you.
So you have to relax and let it go.
Have to let go.
Where there's a saying about let go and let God.
Yes.
That works.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there ascension? Do these alien beings say that there's anything to do with ascension? Because I think a lot of people are waiting for that.
Absolutely.
Ascension, and what does that mean? What does that mean to them?
To me, or to them, ascension is when the human form takes on the light body. And it is as if heaven and earth merge in one form.
Can we do that here on this plane?
Absolutely. That's the point. There is no other reason to be born except to bring the light of God into form, in a physical body.
Is that what the aliens told you?
Yes. It's more like a knowing when I experience with them, even though sometimes I speak of it in terms of communication and talking. It's more like they are me and I am them, and so there's no separation. So it's not like channeling at all. Mm-hmm. It's like being.
Being one.
Being one. And that's it. So it's not a coming and going of knowledge. It's a constant in every state of consciousness. It's constant in sleep. It's constant in dreams. It's constant in every state of consciousness that you live. So for me, the joy is never, ever gone. Even when somebody's rude or unkind, I don't experience it. I don't feel it. When the beings came and told me it's time to remember every moment of suffering that I had ever experienced, living here in this life as joy was wiped away. It was just completely wiped away. Not only do I hardly remember it, but I don't feel suffering.
So was it like a magic wand when he said it's time for you to remember?
It kind of was. It took about 9 months for me to be able to live in my body again, because it was like my body was all new.
Really?
Yeah.
That's an interesting feeling.
It was. It really was. It was like there was this vast universe looking out from my eyes. Mm-hmm. Before it had just been joy, and she was just looking at form. And now I was seeing all this phenomenal light. I was seeing choir of beings. I was experiencing all these different layers of creation simultaneously while being in a body, and I could hardly walk.
Really? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was very difficult at first. I mean, it was tremendous joy. Tremendous joy. Don't get me wrong, it was wonderful. But at the same time, it was shocking and startling and awesome. It was hard to move. It was hard to think. It was hard to, function. Mm-hmm. And so it took me, I'd say, about 9 months to really integrate it. And then now I can carry on a conversation with somebody and have all these experiences.
That's wonderful.
And keep focused on what's happening on each layer.
Did they come to you when you were asleep? And we hear this, where they, especially even if you have a partner in bed with you, where they don't even know what's going on, and pretty soon you are gone. Did they just, is it like Beam Me Up, Scotty on Star Trek? I mean,
yes, it is.
It is. It really is? Oh my goodness. Okay.
I bet
you stand in this beam of light and boom.
That was how it felt to me. I can't say it any other way. Yes.
Were you ever scared? Were you conscious enough to be
Well, I was
aware of your
completely
feelings?
conscious, and I was not afraid until the doctor first came.
What doctor?
The doctor I experienced on the ship, the male
Oh, you
being.
mean they had a medical doctor on the ship?
Well, the doctor was the male being. There were the female being and the male being. And
so there were only two of them that you perceived?
There were, in this one experience,
I
the
see.
experience where they told me it's time to remember, there was a female being and a male being, and then there were 4 other beings that ushered me to the ship.
Did they wear white coats, like lab coats?
No.
They didn't?
I didn't wear one either, so I was buff.
Were they buff?
Yeah.
They were buff too?
Well, their form was different. No, they had no clothes on. I didn't see them dressed. I only saw them drenched in light.
Well, that's a good cloak.
Yeah, it was beautiful. But what was also incredible along with this, this experience that I had was, I'm almost 48 years old, right? And things aren't where they were when I was 25, Elaine.
I see.
Yes. And I'm not
You're talking about
125
you're talking about the
pounds
physical
anymore.
form.
Yeah. I'm not, the perfect 10, not that I ever was, but, I wasn't bad, So anyway, when I went and I looked at myself shortly after this happened, and I was stood, completely naked in front of the mirror. And before in my life, I'd look at myself, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I've got rolls, my breasts are this size or that size, and, I should be, this or that. And For the first time in my life, when I looked into the mirror, all I saw was perfection, the most exquisite human body. It was just absolutely breathtaking.
Appreciation.
Absolute love and regard for the being who is me.
Well, the human body is a marvel.
Yeah.
And we
really
have
is.
been conditioned, I can't find any other word that's better than that, but to clothe the body. Part of it, I think, came from living in the bush where the weather and the conditions
Right.
of living in an environment such as I found when I was in Papua New Guinea with the natives there, you know, I mean, it was more comfortable. It was hot and humid, and so they
Yes.
didn't wear a lot of clothes, but when they were going through the bush, then they obviously put something on, otherwise you end up with scratches and bruises and things
Right.
like that, you know, scars. So I think just the native adaptation to the environment started this, you know, but it's gotten to the point now of fashion, and
Yes.
which I think is fun.
Oh, it's
you
great
know, it's
fun.
great fun.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I don't find anything wrong with that at all. I
no.
think that's really, really fun.
Yeah.
So,
As long as you love yourself,
yes,
no matter how you think you look, if you think you don't fit society's conventional pattern of what a woman should look like, or a man, men experience the same thing. I know
Yes.
my husband is always, you know, patting his belly and saying, oh, you know, I'm skinny. You know, no, honey, you're not 25 anymore. Neither am I.
well, look what he created.
Exactly.
He
Did
created
very
that.
well.
Well, you know, we've had a consciousness here in this country about being slim, and that's supposed to
Yes.
be the idol. But if you go over to Italy, it's the one that's plump that's most adorned.
So it's culture to culture.
It does. It changes,
So,
doesn't it?
It does. But we should love ourselves no matter what we think we should be. That's their message, truly, is love. Love and caring for ourselves. It is only honoring ourselves that we can truly honor other people. And we spend, as a little girl, I was taught that I should love my neighbors, and I did. I was taught that I should care for my neighbors as myself, and I did. But there was no one in all the schools and all the places that I ever lived that taught me how to love myself. And I believe that these beings taught me how to love myself. And through the love I had for myself, I was able to enter into a doorway. And they stood on two sides of that doorway and literally ushered me into a place of absolute joy and love. And now I see nothing but joy and love in everyone.
That's wonderful.
Even murderers. People say, oh my gosh, a murderer, you can't. If he's a part of creation, he is God. I'm not condoning the act, but I'm acknowledging what and who he is. And we are all deserving.
That's interesting. Do you get much flack on that
Oh,
one?
sure. People don't like that.
It's the make wrong.
Yeah, pardon?
It's the make wrong.
Yes, it's the judgment, the concept of this is good and this is bad, and they don't understand that that creation is unfolding naturally exactly the way it's supposed to, and that what they perceive as good and evil is only the polarity of energy that exists to sustain and maintain the phenomenal existence. Creation emerges out of the unmanifest in polarity. And creation does not judge what is good or what is bad. Creation is.
That's true.
It's light, it's love, it's pure perfection and beauty. And like the human body, the cellular structure is always dying. The skeletal
That's true.
system dies, every 2 years, and a whole new skeletal system is remade.
I
Shall
think
we
1 year.
ask 1 year? Shall we ask each cell if they've suffered in their death process? You know, are our vision so small that we cannot see the magnificent magic and splendor that is happening through this whole planet and all the universes?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, Joy, we've come to the end of this show.
Okay.
Can you believe it?
No.
Well, we've had such a good time.
Thank you so much.
I want to thank you so much for joining me on Evolving Ideas, and we're going to have another show together so our viewers will have another experience with you and to learn more. And until next time, I'd like to ask my viewers to write to me. Let me know how you like the show. Write in care of WebWorks, P.O. Box 3695, Olympia, Washington, 98509. So we're going to have another exciting time with Joy Gilbert, as well as many other wonderful shows on Evolving Ideas. So join me next time. I'm Elaine Smitha. Welcome to Evolving Ideas. I'm Elaine Smitha, the most exciting show in Olympia. We deal with alternative issues, things that might be called far out. And that's great because it's a cutting edge show, dealing with things that you can't really... Welcome to Evolving Ideas. I'm Elaine Smitha. This is Olympia's own most exciting alternative television show for the intellectually daring, for those who want to know something beyond the normal that they can't get through ordinary means. So we really deal with much of this kind of thing on this show, and I really thank you for joining me on this evolutionary journey into the knowledge of who we are. My guest on this segment is Joy Gilbert, who has been abducted by alien entities since she was a little over 3 years of age, and it has happened hundreds of times. And we're going to look into her experience and what she can tell us about this, because many of us have not had that experience. And yet I'm being contacted by many people who've heard that Joy was coming to town and was going to be here, and who have had alien abductions themselves. So join me in welcoming Joy Gilbert. Joy.
Thank you, Elaine.
Right off, I want to acknowledge that you have written this book.
Yes.
Called It's a Time to Remember. And this is your story, isn't it?
Yes, it is. In that book, I chronicle my first memory, my first encounter memory, and I go back into my childhood, and I am able to pinpoint certain experiences that I had had throughout my life, that were related to the alien abduction phenomena, and yet I had no way to know that I was having these experiences. Missing time.
So you didn't know this in the very beginning?
Well, when they first came in 1993, I
That's
became
when you
aware.
were aware.
That's right. So I became aware immediately of how all the things that had happened to me in my childhood and in my adolescence were related to this phenomena. See, I had thought that the experiences that I'd had throughout my life were just isolated incidents that really didn't happen. Yeah. And then at the moment I was told it's time to remember, it was like everything just kind of came together at one point for me. And I saw that all connected.
That's very interesting. Well, didn't they put an implant in you? I mean, we hear that a lot about alien abductions, and they put implants in, or they take the seed out, and propagate and mix with their own breed, and trying to perfect something better than what they've got. Tell our viewers about that.
Well, I think that is one of the most difficult. Those are two of the most difficult issues that people have to deal with the alien abduction phenomena. And most of what we experience in our life, of course, is based on perception, what we're taught about the world. So if you look at, for me, when I speak about the implants, if you look at the possibility that our body is a vehicle, it's a car, and sometimes the car, it's our chariot, sometimes the car needs to be taken to the doctor or needs to be taken in order to work properly. If you have something wrong with your heart or something wrong with an organ in your body, you take your body to a doctor to care for it and make it better. Now, these bodies are incredible tools. They have the ability to experience life other than what we perceive as normal. If we're only thinking in terms of our 3 to 7% or 3 to 10% of the brain, then we can only perceive that what we see and what we hear is all there is to life. But when we have what are perceived as paranormal experiences, we think, oh, there's something else happening, and then scientists tell us there's 97 to 10% of the brain that we're not using, and microbiologists tell us that we're only using 1% of our DNA. So I am getting to the answer here, I really am. So what I'm trying to say is that there is knowledge that is too sophisticated for us to have in the regular community, the medical community that exists at this time. In my perception of the implants, when I realized that I had implants, and I realized that the doctor was taking them out of me on the ship, he told me that it was no longer necessary for me to have the implant. And what I became aware of, even though I was shocked because I didn't even know I had an implant, I became aware that that implant allowed me to tap into a certain frequency of light that my body, as it was not able to tap into. So my perception of the implants that people are so devastated about is very positive, Elaine.
That's amazing.
Yes, it is.
One of the most profound experiences, I guess it's been reported about alien abductions, was Travis Walton.
Yes.
Which the movie Fire in the Sky was made after his experience. And he himself has said that it was slightly dramatized by Hollywood, you know, a little scenes and things. When I mentioned this to you, you said, well, I've had all the same experiences that Travis Walton had, but my perception was very different.
Yes,
I think in the movie, the one vivid scene where they have his eyes all opened really wide, and then they come at him with this penetrating utility to pierce his eye, you know, and he's terrorized by this.
Yes.
And you had a similar experience.
I did, and I talk about that in my book.
Oh, do you?
I do. But like you said,
I know I've read your book, but
you didn't know where you got that.
Well, no, I knew that because I heard you say that on the radio when I heard you on Art Bell's show.
Ah, okay.
But I guess I just kind of melded it all together.
For me, even though this body feels pain, I body, it's not like I see myself separate from my body. It's that I understand that this body is something I use while I live on in this plane of existence. It is not who I am. So when the beings removed the implant, I understood what that implant had been placed into my body for. And when they came back and implanted the crystal through my eye,
a crystal through your eye?
They implanted, they had me sit in a chair that looked much like a dentist chair, and they inserted a needle into my eye, into my brain. And on the tip of that object that they inserted into my eye here, my left eye, was a small crystal. And that crystal
must have been really finite.
Was, well, now, if you think that you are your body and that your molecules are dense, then that would make us think that anything big would hurt. Okay?
Good point.
But if you understand that your particles are not what they appear to be, then, and if you have the knowledge and the ability to manipulate molecules,
yes,
then you can
move them out of the way and go through it
without causing damage to skin and tissue and brain matter, if you will. And so this was implanted on my pineal gland, and things really, obviously, when they told me it's time to remember, my life changed.
I would think so.
Because I did, but at the implantation of this exquisite jewel, if you will, things really were different.
So did they tell you it's time to remember when they removed it, or when they put it in?
When I was first on the ship on January 31st, 1993, at my first remembering, they removed the implant, an implant from my abdomen.
So it wasn't this one.
No, before they told me that it's time to remember.
I see. So they removed the one in your abdomen,
right,
and then said it's time for you
now,
to
when
remember.
they removed the one in my abdomen, I was aware that that implant had been in my body for the purpose of aligning my frequencies up to them. And at the point that they removed it, I understood that my body had adjusted to that frequency of light, and that particular implant was no longer necessary for the maintenance of my tool and my ability to relate to them on that frequency.
Is the one in your pineal still there?
Yes.
And do you think that's what has made it you able and responsible for remembering?
No, I don't. I think that is part of the process of becoming a fully enlightened human being. When I lived with the Tibetan Lamas, one of the ways that they, one of the things that happened when a Tibetan Lama died, somebody who was considered very accomplished, very enlightened, very knowledgeable, was that they would burn the bodies, okay? And when they
still do that in
yes,
India.
they do. They still do that anywhere. When they burn the bodies, what they would find is crystals in the skull. So when this implant was placed into me, I didn't quite get it completely at that moment, even though I did, if you will. But everything fit together from all the knowledge I'd received throughout my life. So I saw this for what it was. And I understood that since we are made of light, when we are truly experiencing diamond mind.
Diamond mind?
That's what it's called in Tibetan Buddhism.
Really?
That your mind literally turns to light and crystallizes.
I love it.
So I'm suggesting that as a person goes into enlightenment and maintains and sustains that level of consciousness while they're in a body and they're living in the world, that they actually begin to crystallize.
Really?
Yes.
Is it just the brain or the physical form?
The physical form.
That's fascinating. So are you
You've never
saying,
heard that here before.
No,
You've never heard that.
No, I never heard that
Nobody's
before.
heard it before. So I'm the only one who's saying it.
That's fascinating. Well, you rather infer that everyone has an implant.
Yes, I do infer. I think that we, as a human race, often perceive ourselves as in control of our lives.
Oh, free will.
Exactly.
I mean, I want to have charge of my life.
Exactly.
How can I, exert my free will?
Exactly. When in reality, we are an exquisite aspect, an exquisite part of creation. And as part of creation, we we have no free will.
We have no free will?
No, and we have no choice. There's only the perception that we have choice.
But we've been living under this modality that we have free will and that we make choice. I mean, there's all kinds of choices out there.
Sure, that's the perception. But if you look at the way creation organizes itself, you'll know that creation is doing a fine job without anything that
without
we
our
could
interference.
think. Exactly.
So if
I'm not saying we would interfere, because we can't.
Yes, well, when one says, well, I have a destiny for this career, for instance. I mean, like, this is my destiny. They would like to think that this was their chosen path and that they made this consciously,
Right.
and that they are moving steadily toward that by
Right.
taking the proper steps to lead us there,
Right.
or to lead this person there, whatever.
Right.
So what you're saying is that this has all sort of been preordained?
Exactly.
It has?
Exactly. What will be has already happened.
Yes, I've heard that before.
Yes. What will be, all the things that we think are coming in the future have already occurred.
Now
So there's nothing that we can do to change the inevitable, progress or the
Evolution?
inevitable, the evolution
Of
of mankind or humankind. It is a natural tendency of life to fulfill itself. And we think that we're doing it, but the impulse of creation that moves for us, through us and for us, is what is sustaining and maintaining us. It is not what we are thinking. It is not we are not who we think we are. We are so incredibly exquisite. We are so much more than what we think. That's why, oftentimes people will go into imagery and they'll go, they'll do affirmations and they'll think, I'm going to wish myself a car.
And you work really hard at that.
And you'll work really hard at that. Mm-hmm. Is it the will of creation that you have that Mercedes-Benz? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But you ain't going to have it if it ain't the will of creation. Pure and simple.
So would you say that when things are moving along on a path of destiny, we'll use that as a term here, and it's meant to be on that path, that everything works, that it flows?
Very good, yeah.
And then when it doesn't, then you just get block, and you say, wait a minute, I'm getting so many blocks, this probably is not the way I'm supposed to go. So you turn and take another juncture.
Exactly. And creation is constantly showing you and nurturing you and leading you and guiding you in the direction that you were meant to go. Period.
Through this methodology?
Through this unfoldment. I like to refer to it as
That's good.
Unfoldment, natural unfoldment. Mm-hmm. And it is the natural process of the human being.
That's
like a flower. Mm-hmm. I cannot go enough into the way creation operates by showing flowers, because it's like the seed that's planted in the earth, I mean, no matter what you do, you plant a seed in the earth, and that seed has to break in order for the plant to emerge. Then it has to tear through the soil into the light, and then it grows into a plant and then into a flower that blooms. Did you do that? No. Did I do that? No. That is the natural unfoldment
of the life force.
Of the life force.
Yes.
Yes.
I noticed that the weeds keep coming up, you know.
Yes.
And I ponder this because we wonder about how long seeds live, you know, and they have found that in the soil the seeds will lay dormant for 7 years or 9 years or whatever, maybe even longer, and then when the conditions are proper, then it begins to grow.
manifest.
And yes, it does. And I noticed that I look at the weeds and I say, you're very persistent. And I find that creation is very persistent.
Yes.
And even though I might pluck out one weed, there will be another one, because nature abhors a vacuum, and it will simply, another seed, maybe not the same plant, but another seed will come up and say, gosh, here's my opportunity. Gosh, I better go for it right now. There's the light. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And there they are.
And there they are.
This is amazing.
That's the nature of creation.
So you concur with this.
They say that's why it's so difficult for me to perceive of the concept of choice. Before the beings came, absolutely, I thought I was doing something. I thought I was meditating. I thought I was going here. I thought I was going there. The reality is where you are where you need to be in every given moment, not because you want to be there, no matter what you think, but because creation has decided that that is where you're supposed to be.
So if you have a platter of food on a table, such as on, say, a yacht, a trip, or a cruise, say, you know, and they've got this long table filled with all the choices of foods that you could possibly imagine happening.
Yes.
And you walk down and you say, now, gee, look at all the choices that I have.
Exactly.
Now, I could pick this or this or this, you know, and so you load your plate up. And do we, in life, handle it the same way?
No. And we don't when we're choosing what we eat either.
So are we choosing the very things that the body needs?
We are choosing what is right to be ingested at that moment, whether we are conscious of what we're doing or not. We are fulfilling the will of creation in every moment, at one level of another.
That's very fascinating.
At one level of creation or another.
Whether it's conscious or subconscious.
Whether it's conscious or subconscious doesn't make any difference. Creation is constantly fulfilling its will, not ours. The only thing that we can do is let go. And
just let
stop trying to manipulate, control, cajole, monitor, manipulate, all those things, our lives, and let ourselves be. In the letting go is the fulfillment of creation, is the isness.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because I've had some situations where consciously I was having some difficulty in coming to some kind of terms that would that I would feel justified, you know, this was the right outcome. And then I've adopted this motto, you know, is to have no attachment to the outcome. And since I've done that, when I get into this situation, I say, well, have no attachment to the outcome. And then I do let go. At that moment, I let go. And then it's like suddenly there would be a solution. Suddenly someone would call. You know, and there it is. And so it takes away so much judgment and so much
energy,
all
wasted
this
energy,
exactly,
you know?
That gets very wearing.
And it's going to be the way it is anyway.
Well, see,
no matter how much you worry about it.
Yes, well, for myself, I really have to say that the change occurred in me when I realized that I should have no attachment to the outcome. Because I was really hooked into some things that had happened years ago, and it was really a torment to me. And it was like it kept popping up for me to deal with every time. You know, it would just pop up, and then I'd feel really bad and everything. And then finally, someone said to me, well, just can you go back into each one of those situations and say, you know, have no attachment to how each one of those situations occurred, or what, you know, whatever happened. However the individuals were involved, just give up and say, well, you know, I have no attachment to the outcome. And when I did that, all the issues flattened out. It was the most amazing thing. It was so liberating, and suddenly I felt free. It was like I wasn't carrying all this baggage around with me anymore.
Exactly.
It was the most awesome experience.
Exactly. Beautiful.
So what you're saying is confirming this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So just eliminate. What is it? I am not proposing that people not develop their minds. The mind is an incredible tool, and it's important to feed it if that's the feeling. But what I am saying is to let go of what you perceive. Allow it to flow through you. Eat all you need to eat. I mean, take in knowledge, take in nourishment, take in understanding, take in all the things that you feel you need to experience as you feel you need to experience them. But don't hold on to them, because they are the flow of life. They are not yours. They never will be.
Yes, I have adopted that saying many years ago, nothing belongs to us.
Nothing.
And I've also understand that we're moving through things.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's what happens with the molecules in the body. It's moving through us. Right?
Yes, energy, light is all passing through us all the time. And I think back about when my daughter was just a little girl and she became very ill. And it was shortly after her birth. And I was a new mother and real ignorant about what it was to be a new mother. And she became very ill, and I didn't know that she was ill. And I was at home alone, and this being came in, and I felt this being just kick me in the butt, you know. And I got up and I went to her crib and took her to the hospital. My husband and I got her there quick. He had been teaching at Rollins College down in Orlando, Florida. And when we got there, the doctor said if we hadn't gotten her in right away, she would have been dead. So at that time, what was so critical for me at that time was I realized that I had no control over this being's life.
Yes.
And as a mother, I had to let go. And as a being, I had to do the best I knew how and let go of the outcome. So, you know, I just gave her up, you know, to God. I said, look, I can't do this. You know, this is your child. And that is the truth. We are all the child of God, each of us. And each of us has a life and a destiny and a purpose. And each of us, every moment that we exist, fulfill and serve that purpose for the efficiency of creation. Creation is incredibly efficient. You know, it is constant balance of light and dark. We are sustained in positive and negative energy. And so everything constantly has to be balanced.
The polarities.
Now, what do we see happening? We see that the earth is moving into light and people are moving into enlightenment. There's going to be thousands of years of absolute light where people are going to be in absolute bliss and joy. Why? Because it's time.
I think there's a readiness for this.
Absolutely. I
think we've just about had it with this other side.
Well, we've experienced it.
We've learned it.
We've experienced darkness.
Yes, we have.
And now we're ready to experience light.
Well, that's like the Middle Ages.
Yes.
And the Renaissance.
Exactly. And the same thing just keeps occurring. It's a
cycle?
It's the cycle of life. It's the cycle of the phenomenal existence. As light beings, as light essence, as creation itself manifests, it takes on positive and negative, and it continues throughout time and space. That doesn't change who we are. We are still, all of us, God, if you will, and creation. So we've never not been enlightened. We've never not known who we are. When is it that you go back to God? When is it that you go back to the love of creation? It's when your suffering becomes acute, that you begin the journey home. Okay? So where is the memory that you're not home come from?
That's a good point.
So it's when the disparity between who you know you are and your experience becomes acute that you begin the journey home. So we have always known who we were. There's never a moment that we didn't know who we were.
Oh, that's a good point. So what you're saying is all the traumas and things that we have going on in our life, once we have this pain, this anguish, we begin to question and begin our journey seriously on going back. So it has purposeful good, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. It's going into the darkness and then back home into the light.
That's beautiful.
Into the darkness.
That's beautiful.
And it's the natural flow of creation.
Yes.
And it will always be this way. It will never be any different. There will always be, it will always happen this way. Mm-hmm. And like, it's really important, just because the sun sets here in Olympia and Yelm, it doesn't mean the sun is not arising in Australia.
That's true.
So the sun is always there. Mm-hmm. So we are never, never not enlightened. It is just that we have moments, flashes of darkness. We perceive them maybe as years, but if you look at the whole spectrum of creation and the vastness of all that is and all that ever has been, it's that long.
A moment.
It's as long as a butterfly lands on the tip of a needle and then flies away.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
Do you have alien babies?
Beautiful question. Beautiful question. We have such an interesting perception of ourselves. We think that when we have children, it's a creation, and it's an exquisite creation of God. And if children are created in some other way that we don't think perceptually is correct, then those entities and those beings are not of God in creation. Mm-hmm. My experience with these beings is they have taken my eggs, and there have been manipulation of the genetic material in my eggs and the genetic material in other manifestations of creation, other beings, other aspects of creation. Mm-hmm. And from those manipulations, beings have, yes, taken life. And for me, I see that as exquisite.
Have you ever seen any of them?
Yes. Yes.
Did you hold them?
Yes.
Did they look like us?
No.
What did they look like?
They looked like a combination of me and you. And yet, they didn't look different. Physically, they looked different. Mm-hmm. And physically, they could not be sustained in this atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Do they have a soul?
Absolutely. What doesn't? Everything has light and soul.
Okay, what kind of an environment would they be happy in, whether they could live in?
What kind of environment?
Well, I mean, I presume they can't live in our environment because
their physical needs are different.
They're not based on oxygen, probably.
Right.
And so they have to have a different constituent for their life form to exist.
Right. The other thing that's also interesting is that they have the ability to manipulate matter. Mm-hmm. They have the ability to move interdimensionally in time and space. They have the ability to change their ships to look like planes, and from planes they have the ability to make them look like ships.
So this is shape-shifting?
They shape-shifting, yes, absolutely. They have all those abilities. They've been here forever. People are always saying, oh, how come it's only now? How come they're arriving now? Oh, they're just coming. They're coming to our planet to rape our women or reap the soil. Their worlds have died, and so they don't have anywhere to go. I hear this in the literature. The reality is these beings have always existed, and they have always been here. It's just that only now we're able to see them.
Oh, really?
Yes. It's only now that we've become aware of them, mm-hmm. You see. It's not the reverse.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have heard that they have been here for a very long time, and the comment has been, well, if they wanted to do something to us, they had plenty of time to do it, and all they've been doing is observing.
Well, they've done more than observe.
Well, they may be participating, but we're not like you and I are sitting here talking.
They've protected.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and they have shown where they are. There was a time in 1973, if you look at the research, some of the research on this, and maybe you've heard this, but there was a time in 1973 when along the border, the Canadian border of the United States, and along the border of the USSR, that at one time all the what is it, those satellite things that shoot up and kill people? I don't even know what they're called. All the missiles were inoperable, and UFOs were sighted over each site where the missiles were. And I think that's a very powerful message.
Yes.
There was another time when I read in the literature where a pilot during World War II was preparing to fire on a German plane, and in that moment there was a UFO that appeared, and his plane became inoperable, and at the same time the German plane became inoperable. So, you know, these things have been happening all the time. You know, we see them, we hear them, we experience them, but we deny them.
Yes.
Because we don't understand them. Mm-hmm. They bring fear.
This is true.
So it's important to me that people see the positive side of this phenomena and understand, even if they perceive that these beings are bad or evil, that they understand that what they perceive creates their reality, and that may not be the reality.
So everyone's allowed their own thought process and their own decision.
If they see evil, then they'll experience evil.
Oh, so you're saying that whatever they perceive is what they experience.
Exactly. We are, each of us, a reflection of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I've heard that before.
You know, so if you have an experience, like for me, the difference between Travis Walton and me and myself, when I went to be with them, at one point in my experience with them, I saw them, and this was long before this incident occurred. This was something I remembered. This was so powerful for me, Elaine. When I saw them, I felt incredible love toward them and saw how exquisitely beautiful they were, okay? And in the moment that I saw them as beautiful, that was reflected back into my heart instantaneously. And I understood that the love that was in my heart and the acceptance that was in my heart was manifested for me through them.
Oh, interesting.
So what I was experiencing with them, it's the same thing. What I experienced with them was myself. Mm-hmm. And so I had an experience of me. Mm-hmm. So if I had an experience of light, I had an experience of self.
That's beautiful. So they're just a reflection of who you are.
They really are. You see who you are in them. I have a friend of mine, actually, she's a doctor, and she had these experiences as well, and I met her. A few of us met in San Francisco, and this one woman was telling me how ugly she thought they were. And, you know, and I remembered back to that experience I had and how sad I was for her. Yes, you look at a little frog, and maybe you could think that was ugly. How? You know? How can you think anything that is created in this creation is ugly? I can't imagine it.
Because everything has its place, doesn't it?
And it's absolute perfection.
Sometimes you see these little tiny bugs flying around.
I know.
You know, they're so itsy
little
bitsy,
gnats
and you
or
think,
something.
my goodness, this little creature is perfect in its formation.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just amazing when you see that.
Exactly.
From minute to large.
Exactly.
Sometimes I marvel at the squirrels because I watch them leap from tree to tree.
Oh, yeah.
And it amazes me because it's like that leap of faith that they know that there's going to be something to substantiate their jump, you know, their leap, that there is something over there.
Yes.
And I marvel, and I think, would that we had that much faith within ourselves
Yes.
to be able to make that leap as confidently
Exactly.
as the squirrel.
Exactly. And that is the only place to be.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's the
That's
only
really
place to be. That's
beautiful.
beautiful. Thank you. It's a
You're
wonderful
welcome.
analogy.
You're welcome. So I think, you know, Travis Walton in that movie, they showed almost like little grays, and
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
that looked nondescript in terms of intelligence. They just didn't look like they were, you know, like they just looked like they were doing a job. Did you, in your encounters, have an association with the Greys, or were they a variety of different entities, or?
Very good, very good. Yes, there is a variety of different entities that exist from different planets.
Really different planets.
Yes,
So where did
yes,
you visit?
yes.
Can you identify the planets?
It was not from this solar system. I talk about in my book one place that I went to. But if you look at yourself and you recognize that you are a microcosm and a reflection of the macrocosm, then you can go within yourself and you can be in all those places.
I've heard this.
This is true, because there is nothing that exists outside you that does not exist within you.
Now you're talking about consciousness.
I am talking about consciousness. That's all I've been talking about.
And projecting, I know, but where specifically now? That you can project your mind. This is, in essence, what remote viewing is about, is being able to project your mind to another location and see what is there, and have that that instant recognition and instant connection and the gathering of knowledge at that particular space.
I'm talking about something that may be the same as remote viewing, and that's a very good way to define it. But in essence, it's a place where you're not projecting yourself anywhere.
You're just being.
You just are it. So in the being, you have full access to all those places within all the universes. So there's never a need to go anywhere, or to project yourself anywhere, or to think about going anywhere. There is only the being and the isness, and in that place you have then access. It's interesting because people think that when someone goes into enlightenment that they have all these powers. And this is true.
Yes, I think so. I think that's perceived.
This is true. But the reality is that knowledge and awareness is only used for the will of creation. It's not used to serve someone's perception or someone's ego. So that's the difference between somebody who's truly enlightened and someone who's not. Anybody who would want someone to follow them, who would want to make money off people, who would want to lead them in their life and control the way they think, without allowing them to know that the truth is within themselves, is deceiving them.
That's wise. You're giving us great wisdom.
It's very important to know. A lot of people don't understand that. They follow
Somebody
from their
else's
heart,
ideal.
From their heart. And I totally understand the need at a certain level to do that. But you have to see who you're following.
Yes, one of my guests had said at one point, if you're going to follow someone, make sure that it is something that you are, you know, personally going to benefit from.
Exactly.
In other words, look over their life and see whether or not it exhibits the mode that you want to emulate. And if so, then great, follow them. But if it doesn't, then don't.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. And anybody, like I said, this is a real clear advice to give somebody who's interested in finding their way home. And people are out there searching, and they're going from one person to another, and they're not getting anything because they're not tapping into the people of substance. They're just, here, there, flitting from this belief to that belief. And so it's very important, if you're going to take advice from somebody, make sure that person lives at a level of consciousness that they can provide truth.
Oh, that's interesting.
Not something that will chain you to more delusion and more perception and more ignorance, but that they're offering something that will set you free from your delusion and your perception and your thinking mind.
To allow you to grow.
To allow you to experience knowledge. Experience knowledge and light.
Experience knowledge.
And light.
But wouldn't that, in the end, allow you to grow in your own self-awareness? Or are you saying that that's not necessary?
It's not necessary.
So,
I'm saying that once you go home, you need no more food.
So where's home?
Inside yourself. It's through your feelings. The only way you can get there is through, there's two things that are really critical for going home. One is to understand that there is always going to be suffering in the phenomenal existence.
That's phenomenal is in this
Phenomenal is in this existence.
Yes, I think we think it's someplace else.
Exactly. It's right here. And to let go of the duality, take your mind out of, oh, I have to fight over this and fight over that. Be yourself. Be who you are in the world. Feel your feelings. Be the best person you can be. All those kinds of things, okay? But the only way you can go home is to transcend the phenomenal world. No amount of thinking is going to get you home. It's true. No amount of thinking will ever take you into enlightenment.
It's a feeling.
It's
A
an
feeling,
experience.
An experience.
Yeah, it's a cognition. It's a
That's an
comprehension.
awareness.
Exactly. Awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that has to be experienced. So that's really critical. And you can only do it through yourself. I don't live so that people can do it through me. I've done it. But I'm not here to show them to do it through me. Mm-hmm. I'm here to tell them that they have to do it through themselves.
That they can do it themselves.
Exactly. Yes.
So you are being a model for others to learn from.
Exactly.
That you can say, look, I did it, you can do it too.
Exactly. What am I? I'm a big white woman that was born in Seattle, Washington, and I did it.
There you go.
Well, that says it all. If I can do it,
anybody can do it.
Anybody can do it. If I can go home and live in absolute bliss and absolute peace and absolute joy and experience that every waking moment, so can everybody else.
That's really wonderful. I think everybody would like that.
Everybody, yes.
So everybody has an implant.
Everybody has experienced implants.
How many people would you say have been whisked aboard a ship by alien entities?
I would say everyone.
Really?
Yes.
At some point in their life?
Yes.
For what reason?
Exactly what I said about
to do the implantation?
To take care of the physical form. I mean, the reality is that human life is an experiment. And I don't mean that in a sense that it's not natural. Okay? What is the experiment? The experiment is not the form itself, but the experiment is bringing the light of God into the physical body. That is the experiment. People are always saying to me, oh, they're doing experiments on us. There is only one experiment happening, and the experiment of bringing consciousness and light into form. That is the experiment. How does that happen? You have to manipulate the body. If you're not enlightened, you're not fully functional. If you're not using 100% of your mind, if your DNA isn't completely activated in your whole body, you are not a functioning human being. Do we have anything on this level of creation that allows our body to transcend the 3 to 10% of the brain we use? No. But we have beings that exist in subtler layers of creation that exist there for the sole purpose of helping our bodies literally attune, if you will, to different frequencies of light. And these beings are the beings that I'm talking about, the beings I call my friends. You talked about grace. There are many beings that exist in all the worlds that can be counted. I mean, there is no way to count all the beings that exist. There are so many thousands and thousands and thousands of them. But what you can be sure of is that anything that exists in the love and the light of creation.
Mm-hmm.
And what you fear is the shadow.
That's true.
And what you doubt is the shadow of ignorance. So I encourage people to let their fear go and be their feelings and not be afraid of the darkness, because there is no such thing.
Is there reincarnation? Briefly?
Oh, beautiful. Reincarnation. When you go home, you see every aspect of creation as yourself. In that, you are recreated in each aspect of creation.
Sounds good to me.
It's wonderful.
Well, Joy, thank you very much for joining me on Evolving Ideas. We've come to the end of this show. It's been wonderful sharing with you all this wonderful exchange of knowledge. And I'd like to thank my viewers for watching, and to join us next time when we explore another avenue of creation on our marvelous universe. And tell your friends and neighbors to join us as well. We loved having you today and doing this show. So join me next time. I'm Elaine Smitha.